Mr Corbyn, you've just met with opposition MPs and leaders. Can you tell us, how did that meeting go and what was decided?
It was a very good meeting. We met in my office, had a very good discussion, excellent biscuits provided by me, and people were in good humour because we're working together to try to stop this government crashing out on the 31st of October. And today the priority is the application that's being made for the order paper to be handed over to the Commons tomorrow in order to introduce legislation which we fully expect to pass through all its stages in the House of Commons tomorrow, and it then goes to the Lords and hopefully becomes law very quickly.
So do you believe you have enough MPs to support that legislation in order for it to pass in the House of Commons?
Yes, we do believe we have the MPs here and ready to support that legislation because many are alarmed at the consequences for jobs, for our economy, of crashing out on the 31st of October without a deal, which is what the Prime Minister seems determined to try to do, and riding roughshod over Parliament and democracy in the process. That's why Parliament asserting itself on behalf of those people that don't want us to crash out is important.
Can you guarantee all of your own Labour MPs will support the legislation?
I expect and hope that every Labour MP will support that legislation.
And will there be consequences if they don't?
I hope all Labour MPs, as MPs of other parties, will recognise they've been elected here in order to represent their constituents, and Parliament has voted twice, the second time by a very large majority, to say that no deal is not acceptable, and I hope they will all come on board and work with us on this. This is a defining moment in this Parliament.
Can you just clear up this general election issue for us? I asked you yesterday whether Labour would support a general election under any circumstances if Boris Johnson were to call one, and you told me of course. But this morning that seems to have shifted to take into account the no-deal legislation and the process surrounding that. Can you tell me what Labour's position is? Would you support a general election under any circumstances?
We want a general election, as do all the other parties. Under the Fixed Term Parliament Act, it's for the Prime Minister to introduce a measure on this or not. He hasn't done so. The priority is to prevent a no-deal exit from the EU on the 31st, and we'll see what comes after that. We have mechanisms in place to keep in touch with other parties in order to process this.
So to be clear, if you succeed and get this legislation through the Commons, and Boris Johnson does decide to call a general election, Labour will be supporting that?
If this legislation goes through, then there's an extension of Article 50 of membership of the European Union for 3 months after the end of October. Let's see what happens after this legislation has gone through. And if an election is called, I'm absolutely ready to fight it. Our party is ready to fight it and take the message out there, the Labour message of ending austerity, of investing in all parts of this country, particularly those areas that have been left behind by decades of a lack of investment, lack of good quality jobs and lack of good quality services.
Are you confident that if Boris Johnson calls an election and sets a timetable, that you, if you were to vote for it, that you could ensure that that timetable was stuck to? I understand you've asked for some legal advice around that.
We're looking at all the legal advice we're receiving at the present time, but I think the important thing is to stop a no-deal exit and have the people of this country decide their own future.
Just finally, if you don't succeed with the legislation you've got planned for this week, what's your next plan?
As you know, the Leader of the Opposition has the power to call a motion of no confidence at a time of the Leader of the Opposition's choosing, and I will choose a time.
Would that be this week?
I will choose a time, but you'll know soon enough.